Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Maybe we don't need a private sector anymore. Maybe that's passe. That's so 20th century.
I need to stop it.
We need to rethink ordering ourselves around just government because what we see is two very different things happening in the public sector versus the private sector. And what we hear from the public sector is very different than what we're hearing from the private sector as well. Yeah, there are sort of sops to this idea. I know people are being hurt economically, but it's sort of dismissed very quickly. There's no consideration for what we've talked about in terms of how economic devastation has public health implications, both systemically, like our healthcare system. A poor economy doesn't support a robust healthcare system. Hate to break it to the politicians, most of them. Number one. Number two, just in terms of the idea that existence is something more than just biological existence. There's just not much consideration given to it. It's what did we hear yesterday? Carping from governors about what the federal government is or isn't going to do to bail out state and city governments. The delay on getting the refill on the payroll protection program. The horror of Brian Kemp moving gradually to reopen portions of Georgia's economy.
It's a big day in Georgia today. Gyms, massage parlors, tattoo, hair salon. It makes me want to fly to Georgia to get my hair done. But I won't do that because I'll stay in place.
What is being said by most politicians and amplified by most of the media is completely at odds with what you're hearing from people who know a thing or two about the sort of devastation being wrought on our private economy. And I know this is going to come as a surprise to many, but you don't have government without a private economy.
I hate to tell them that.
Dan Henninger's piece in the Wall Street Journal yesterday, that economic suicide is not normal behavior, that used to not be a controversial statement. It is now. And listen to our leading lights. The intelligentsia, the political intelligentsia, as represented nicely by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Don't ever go back to work.
There's a lot that we could be doing right now, but ultimately, I think when we talk about this idea of reopening society, only in America does when the president tweets about liberation, does he mean go back to work? When we have this discussion about going back or reopening, I think a lot of people should just say, no, we're not going back to that. We're not going back to working 70-hour weeks just so that we could put food on the table and not even feel any sort of semblance of security in our lives.
Work is slavery in the brave new world.
People are dying to go back to work.
That is,
they would welcome 70, 80-hour weeks right now. Are you kidding me?
The proles have nothing to lose but their chains. So in the wake of the sort of economic catastrophe we're inflicting on ourselves, I mean, if you consider 26.5 million people being displaced from their jobs in 5 weeks, if you consider that a catastrophe.
1 in 6 Americans are unemployed right now.
And in the face of that, what you're getting from the left are Marxist tropes. For more on this whole matter, somebody that I was referencing who does know a thing or two about markets.
Because he's seen a thing or two.
About markets and our market economy is Alan Lancz. He's the president of Alan B. Lancz and Associates, an investment advisory company located in Toledo. And there was a good discussion with him memorialized at marketwatch.com. Which reminded people that Alan Lancz is somebody who benefited because he made good strategic decisions during the 87 and 2008 downturns, recessions. So he's been through some of these, as you say, he's been through a lot of things, and he's come out the other side. So he may have some advice that should be taken by the political class. Alan Lancz, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, Dan.
So one of the things you say is we should manage our expectations. The suggestion that a V-shaped recovery, maybe even a U-shaped recovery at this juncture with what has occurred is improbable?
Yeah, I think V-shape is going to be very difficult. The next 45 days are critical. As we open up parts of Georgia here, and our state here in Ohio is planning to open May 1st, and that has to really be done and executed almost to perfection to get a V-shape. And I just think with the country not united on a political standpoint, as some of the things you were referring to before my introduction, it's going to be a difficult environment to see a V shape and that we're back, growing like we were. The good news into this is January, February, the economy was very strong. Housing was even looking stronger in February. The bad news is all parts of the warnings we had in '87 and 1999 with the tech bubble and the financial crisis of 2008 are parts of this crisis, this pandemic. You have the global aspect with reaching all parts of the world, even more so than 2008, 2009. We're starting to get record high valuations like we saw with the tech and telecom .com bubble in 2000, and basically you had the unforeseen event in '87. It was portfolio insurance, and people thought that was a way to return their money if the market went down, and they found out that was flawed. And here, obviously, we got blindsided with the pandemic. So you've got the combination of all three of these with this crisis, unfortunately, and then you add the added blow of our energy sector and what Saudi Arabia and Russia have done to really try to, as far as just destroy our independence in energy. And that's the reason we really don't see a V shape. And the rally that we've seen here in the past couple of weeks, which have been really impressive, if didn't heed our advice and took profits at record highs in January and February, I would lighten up if you're overexposed in equities. Particularly, it's going to be hard for us. Can you imagine the developing markets, how long it's going to take for them? So there's a lot of strategies to invoke, and I think that's why the next 45 days are critical.
With respect to the market, you've had a number of people saying it's remarkable that the market isn't down, another 20 to 30% from where it sits today, and obviously it's being inflated by federal, by the action of the Fed. But I mean, is that your position too? Is it sort of you're indicating about artificial highs that we haven't seen the bottom of the trough yet?
It's hard to say. I mean, nobody's lived through this, so again, if it's executed through perfection, we have some positives, with all this flooding, and deficit spending, interest rates are, at near zero, in 2007 when we warned, we go into a money market and it's paying 5%. Here, people wish they could get 5% on their cash right now. So, but I think it's just an environment that. It's definitely going to be challenging. I think the rally here you've seen we consider as a gift if you are overexposed or if you have asset allocation where you have a little bit of everything and you thought we go down in one area, you'll go up and make up for it in another area. I think too many people avoided the cash component. So if you don't have cash now, I think whether it's real estate, whether it's the stock market, whether it's your business, I think liquidity is going to be key. So use the strength of people chasing stocks and worried that they're going to miss out on a V shape and maybe lighten up, especially if you're overexposed.
Is another sector, do you see another sector in the near term in as precarious a position as the energy sector right now?
Yeah, unfortunately, Dan, that's a great question. You got retail. I think retail is going to change. Even real estate, and we have too much retail. We have too many office buildings. We sold all of our real estate going into 2007 at record highs, and we sold a lot of our real estate as far as this past year or two. And the interesting thing is, almost everyone, I think all but one, were buyers overseas. So they really wanted, and they were paying record levels. But I wouldn't want to own a large office building right now. I wouldn't want to own box retail, even restaurants and what have you. I think they're not going to be able to pay the rents that they did in the past. So the consumer is going to be key here, and you got to have that confidence, and that's where you have that fine line about opening up the economies, which I think need to be done, and we're calling it economic suicide governance, the new ESG investing, and it's a situation where it has to be done, but it has to be done right, and that's why these next 45 days are critical.
Yeah. It's 45 days. Why 45 days?
Well, that's going to bring us into the first week of June, and by that time we'll really have an idea if the consumer has the confidence and if we can get back on track, because the consumer is such a vital part of our economy. And in 2008, the U.S. economy and the consumer and the Chinese Chinese economy were the two, as far as engines that really brought the global financial recession and crisis out of the brink, including the flooding of this liquidity. So we flooded the liquidity now, but now we need somebody to spend, and we need to get things back on track, and that's why opening up these economies are critical, and doing it in a way where you're motivating and where you're reestablishing the confidence in our consumer, and I think the money is there, the attitude's there, it's a pent up build up. It just has to be done in the right way, and that's what we have to monitor. We're monitoring that now in Austria, and Germany opened up this week, and obviously it's harder in China to get information. We monitor that as best as we can, but it's a learning situation for everybody, and if we adapt, we got such good communications, compared to the last pandemic 100 years ago, that it's not out of the cards. I just think it'll be more of a U if it's done correctly, and I'm hoping I'm wrong and it is a V, but I'd rather be on the conservative side with our investors and gradually get in. There'll be some winners out of this: technology, healthcare, and those are the areas we're concentrating in. As biotechnology. So there'll be some winners out of this, and that's what we were buying into the weakness in March. But to say, I want every sector, and I want, asset allocation, these models that so many, are in tune to, I just think is wrong in an environment like what we have right now.
I wanted to go back. You were talking about certain, public sectors. What about the airline industry, the cruise industry, hotels, convention centers?
Yeah, that's a great question, Amy, because the situation is, that there's 30, 40 companies that are hospitality, travel related in the S&P 500. So that was one of the things we were talking about in January and February: is know what you own. You own the S&P 500. You own a lot of those companies. I wouldn't want to own a cruise company right now that's domiciled, outside of the United States. I don't think, we're gonna, we can only bail out so many entities, like you were saying. Now the states are asking, et cetera, and the last thing I think would be on the list would be a cruise company outside the United States. It'd be great to bail out. I mean, there's some that energy is critical for our military complex, and obviously travel is critical. So if you had to own something, I'd own like a Delta. Or Southwest that's financially solid. You want to own companies that have the fortress balance sheet that will come out of this, that can buy the weaker brethren and come out of this stronger, and can sustain it in case that 45 days is not done to perfection. And you don't want to own these weaker companies, because I think a lot of them won't survive.
The only thing left to bail out is for the federal government to bail out itself. So we'll see if that happens. I wanted to ask you, though, all these market interventions you're trying to track and understand the implications of on a daily basis. Which do you think, from a recovery perspective, has been the most productive, and which has been the least productive?
From what are you referring to as far as what we're looking at?
Like payroll protection program, the Fed interventions to prop up the muni bond market, your municipal facility, the Main Street lending program, the individual checks to families and to individuals and families. I mean, all the things, all of the government market interventions. Which has, do you think, been the most productive in terms of a prospective recovery, and which has been the least productive or the most damaging?
Yeah, I think the delays are the most damaging. So I mean, I think everybody's doing their best, and I think effort is critical, and we're seeing a lot of effort. As far as now, with the administration, and I think it's a situation where. I think the small business is going to be the most productive because that's really the engine of our economies. These bigger companies can survive, but these small companies, the small business group, if they don't survive the next 45 days, many of them won't reopen, and that's why it's so critical. So the PPP and having another round of that, I think, has been the most critical. But it's really hard. Everything they've done as far as I think some mistakes. The least productive is the unemployment, where we were talking to a client in California, and they said they can't get their employees back because they're getting more in unemployment, and they're making $22 an hour in unemployment, and they're paying $18 there, so everything hasn't been done to perfection, but I think all of them had the right intent. It was just it's a whole new paradigm for everybody. So it's been difficult, but I think still the small business is going to be critical to keep that afloat, because unfortunately a lot of those won't open if we're going into end of May, early June, and they still don't have funding or at least a strategy to open like what we're trying to do, in Ohio next week.
He is an acolyte of storied investor Sir John Templeton. He's Alan Lancz, president of Alan B. Lancz and Associates, an investment advisory company located in Toledo, Ohio. Alan Lancz, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your insights.
My pleasure. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Amy.
Take care.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
On the AM 560 The Answer mobile app. Just text the word app to 64636 to download the app today.
I was FaceTiming with a friend, and she showed me her sunroom that she's been using every day. She can escape to a place in her home that's cheery, relaxing, and so comfortable now, like a vacation indoors. And it's all thanks to Sunspace by Arborview. Sunspace updated and overhauled an old enclosed patio, and now it's her most favorite room of the house.
Rediscover your dream sunroom. That existing sunroom or screened-in porch that's been neglected or used for storage can be a beautiful living space waiting to come alive. It just needs TLC from the sunroom experts at Sunspace by Arborview. Convert your screened-in porch into a 3-season room